Welcome to Running on Ice, the coolest community in freight. I'm your host, Mary O'Connell, bringing you the latest tech updates, warehouse news, and everything happening in the cold chain world. Not only is there the coolest show in freight, but there's also Running on Ice, the newsletter that could not be colder. You can subscribe to that on freightwaves.com/running on ice. Today, we welcome back the one and only gentleman from Thermal Custom Packaging, Dr. Cliff Gade and Dr. Robert DiLoretto. Welcome back to the show, guys.
Thank you. Thank you.
I am excited for today. We're getting into the frozen, or not, like I said, the frozen food delivery system. We've touched on it a little bit, but this is kind of new for you guys because in the past we've talked about pharmaceuticals and pretty much all of the other crazy, insane things you guys have done, like kicking things off of a helicopter or whatever the military likes to do their stress tests of, which are always my favorite things. But yeah, so frozen food today. Oh, how did you guys kind of stumble into this, and why does it kind of fit so nicely into what you guys have already started doing over there?
We were approached by a Fortune 500 company that wants to completely wean itself off of dry ice. And they ship to influencers and on closed loop, which we define as they get the product back. Uh, and they asked us to design a box that would last 36 hours. To start with, they sent us a 18-inch outside diameter single wall cardboard box with standard 2-inch insulation that was basically R2. And we put our product in that, and we found that we could get around 24, 30 hours without loading the box with our product. And I suggested that we upgrade their insulation. So we built them a vacuum panel, and we encapsulated the vacuum panel in a puncture-resistant film, and we made it 2 inches in diameter all the way around. And we ended up that every inch of the vacuum panel tested out to be R25. So we ended up with R50. We put our product in it with the goal being to go 36 hours. And 97 hours later, we were still at -5 degrees. So we stopped the test and we said, all right, we'll see you 36 hours and we'll spot you a couple hours on the side. Now, obviously, we can decrease the insulation and fine tune it depending on what they want. The next thing we did was test it out with refrigerated, even though their goals were mostly frozen. And the box, after 8 days, was still 2.2 or 2.4 degrees, and my batteries ran out on the data logger that was recording the thing. And I don't know, I have no idea how much longer, but I don't know what the point of going much longer is. I mean, we're going to be into weeks. So unless we're shipping by sailing ship to Europe, there's just no point. And now the ball is in their court. They're looking everything over. It's a big ordeal for a company of this size to make such a massive change, but they're pretty strong on wanting to go green. And this would be an interesting combination, us and them.
Because I mean, if you're working with a global shipping company or a company that's shipping things everywhere, I have a very hard time figuring out how you could go 8 days and still not be at your destination. Like, obviously, unless you said, you're shipping something on a container ship, but that's not something like that type of product you're not shipping on a container ship, like you're not shipping individual boxes on container ships, because I honestly don't know where they would go on a giant container ship. There's not a lot of spare room to just store a little stack of boxes. But I was thinking, like, even in some of the rural, underdeveloped areas of, the entire world, you can do, you like, even if, oh, road washes out or there's a flood or whatever, and you can't deliver it that day, you have to get it another day, like, you're still, what, maybe at 4 or 5 days at that point in time, let alone 8?
These giant companies have told us that because of the massive volume they ship, that the pricing they get is not much different from 1 day to 2 days to 3 days. Think about you or I. I ship you overnight FedEx, uh, a box that's 18 inches. I'm gonna probably spend $300, depending on whether these guys are probably shipping that box for a third of that, and it doesn't really go down since they're best price on 2nd or 3rd day. So it's not so much the saving on shipping time. What it is the safety factor that when something gets held up in weather, which, I don't can't tell you how many emails I get from UPS and FedEx. "We're sorry, your shipment is held up." I mean, they must have a standard email that goes out. "Due to the snowstorm in Outer Mongolia, it somehow affected my shipment." And so the bottom line is that's where it saves them. And on top of that, they wanna go green. We're green. We're a non-toxic solution. We have a product that lasts more than 10 years. It can be reusable thousands of times, and, it checks all the boxes.
So, do you mind breaking down kind of, because we've talked about before the difference of the phase change materials versus dry ice, but for those who haven't necessarily sat here and listened to us yabber on before, what are some of the main differences between these phase change materials that you guys have versus a hunk of dry ice?
Alright, well, I'll give you a real world example. The military, for certain products, ships 5-day. Regardless of the amount of dry ice you put in a box, regardless of the amount, it'll only go 2, 3 days maximum, and that's because dry ice is minus 109 degrees, and unless it kept at minus 109 degrees and pressurized, it sublimates. It goes off into a gas. So they were unable on throat cultures from bases around from Guam. That's what 20 years ago, we started with Guam and throat cultures. That's a 5-day shipment, and they couldn't get them without getting destroyed. So we started shipping their stuff for them. And, 5 days was not a problem. With this newest box, I'm not sure we might be able to go 15 days. But, there's a trade-off. When you wanna go longer, you either need better insulation, thicker insulation, or more phase change material. So you don't wanna over-design. If somebody says, "I need 24 hours and let's go 48 for safety," that's fine. But going 8, 10 days is pretty much overkill. We will probably scale down our insulation if this project moves forward. Will come from 2 inches down to maybe inch, inch and a quarter, and, and see how many hours. It's gonna be, as I said, it's R25 at 1 inch versus R2 standard insulation. One of the problems I found was there's no one in the United States that's building, vacuum panels. I couldn't find anyone, and so we ended up having to do a lot of the work ourselves, which was expensive on small volume. It would change if we go to big volume. I mean, it probably costs $1,000 to build panels for one 18-inch box, and that'll come down to $5 a square foot if with volume. But when they have to be custom cut. Um, and putting the puncture-resistant film means that our client wants to reuse it to recoup their investment hundreds of times, because in a vacuum panel, if you put a hole in it, it's not gonna be the insulation anymore. That was our solution, a relatively inexpensive puncture-resistant membrane.
Yeah, one of the things, Mary, that we do is we work closely with the companies to find out they don't know what they want. They have ideas, but they don't know the practicality of some of these ideas. And there's all kinds of nuances. This one large company that Cliff was just talking about was shipping some chocolate, frozen chocolate. And one of the things we found is as the temperature goes up, and if they're packaged in a humid environment, you get literally sweating, on moisture on the chocolate as the thawing occurs. Uh, and they had no idea that was an issue. So we worked with them and say, well, you may have to change how you're packaging them, do it in a dry room, to get the humidity out of there, which is going to make them last longer and not spoil. We did the same thing with Fresh Direct, a few years ago. They didn't know how to freeze things. They bought a whole bunch of the PCMs and stacked them one on one in a pallet, put it in a blast freezer, and they couldn't get them to freeze because they didn't understand the need for air circulation, spacing between the PCMs. And so those are the kind of things that we don't just sell a product. We work with the company to get them to understand how this stuff works and explain to them how to make it work for them. And so it's kind of a unique position to be in, and basically nobody else does it that way.
I like that you guys have more or less become, I'm gonna call you like cold chain coaches of like, hey, I understand that you think that I understand that you have all these great ideas, but maybe, why do we need to have something cold for 8 days? What is our end game here? What's our goal other than just like, can we do it? Sure, yeah, we can do it, but I kind of you guys come in and say, what's the end game here? What's the means to the end? Because you guys, again, you can do whatever, like, I'm confident you guys can make whatever somebody desires, but at some point in time, it becomes, well, what's the point of this? Are we doing it? Like, what's the end goal? Because otherwise, we're just sitting here, testing a bunch of stuff. And I kind of like that you guys come in and say, what's a realistic goal? What's that realistic application? And then also, hey, have you heard about how to freeze things? That's that's a little bit of a terrifying moment.
Well, I'll give you a little more information on that. What happened was, it was a -16 PCM, pallets of it, pallets, and they put it in their walk-in refrigerators, and they said, "It's not freezing." And I said, "What temperature are your refrigerator?" And they told me some temperature. I went up there and checked their refrigerators. They weren't even close to the temperature. I knew they were above -16 because they were driving forklifts in and out, and it wasn't there. Now, did they break a few rules because it had to by law for health reasons? Yeah, probably. But, the temperature they thought was -20. But, yeah, it was, except there was a 20-foot door with forklifts going in and out, and it ended up being above -16 degrees. And I said, "This is never gonna freeze." Then we ran into the problem, if you come home from the grocery store and you have a chicken and you throw it in the freezer, big deal. But if you come home from Costco's and you put 300 pounds of chickens in your freezer, it's gonna go bad before it freezes because it's too much. I explained to them, "You can't do it the way you're doing it in a pile. You have to have airflow." So that's what Bob's referring to. I mean, we have to think the way they think and try to figure out why isn't this working? Because everything we do, once we found out what they wanna do, we exactly replicate it. And being in the Florida Keys, I'm in a warm environment, so I can always check things, and no one else can this time of year. I can. And it was interesting because this company shipped me 30 pounds of chocolate, and it came thawed. So they reshipped it, and it came thawed. And they were both priority overnight shipments, and they both failed. So everything I tested, and I told them, "Please don't send me any more chocolate. My entire freezer is full of chocolate." Alright, but all the chocolate was slightly melted, but I put it down to -30 degrees, and, "I don't want any more chocolate. I'll use this. It'll be good enough. Yeah, it's slightly melted, but it'll work for testing." I mean, I'm gonna weigh 700 pounds if you ship another thing of chocolate. Um, so I suspect they're having more issues than they may have said, and obviously coming to very South Florida, we're gonna pick up on those issues. It would be different where you are. If we're shipping to you, it's below freezing. So you're not gonna notice things as much, but you ship down here any time of the year, you're gonna have a problem if it's not done right. So we're the ultimate test of keeping things frozen. If it can stay frozen down here, we can stay frozen anywhere.
The common denominator, Mary, in all of these companies and all of these purchasing people, they or corporate from way above get rid of dry ice. I mean, that's the denominator. The problem is nobody knows how to do it, other than us. And so, little by little, we're making ourselves known. The medicine business is, as Cliff says, been going on for 20 years. The food business, the grocery business is relatively new, and it's easy. Like you said, you order the groceries and, instead of going to the store, and you get them in a short time and everything's fine. It's just the longer deliveries and larger amounts of frozen stuff. But that's the kind of stuff that we can help anybody with.
This is completely not I'm not gonna say completely unrelated, but I would love you guys to test, an ice cream cake, um, to ship it all the way down to Cliff in South Florida and see if it survives.
Well, you know what? An ice cream cake is ice cream. That's a good test. There's one that's just as bad, and that's hot dogs, things with a lot of fat.
Hot dogs?
Yes, any product with a lot of fat in it, because the fat acts like an insulator. But for, the other company, we did do frozen ice cream, and I had a little less trouble with frozen ice cream than I did with hot dogs. I used -21 PCM to keep the ice cream frozen, which
Mhm.
is exactly the same temperature as your freezer cranked all the way up, so I knew it would work. I mean, it's the same temperature. If that doesn't work, then ice cream won't stay frozen in your freezer. Um, and it worked fine. The hot dogs were pretty much a little bit more of a challenge.
The ho that is if you gave me, like, what's the most difficult thing to keep cold, hot dogs would never make the top 20.
Yeah, well, they gave me a smorgasbord of, spinach. I don't remember anymore, different things, and that's when I had to learn about hot dogs, and ice cream and what temperatures and oh my god. No, I'm a doctor. It's like blood and organs, and now I'm doing hot dogs. But it doesn't really matter what you're keeping cold or frozen. Once you specify exactly what temperature. But like Bob was indicating, these companies don't know. So we have to figure that out for them. They don't know.
I wanna see your search history for what is the fat content of hot dogs and, like, how do I keep a hot dog cold and frozen?
Yeah. Only I would know the answer to that because I had to do it. Yeah. Yeah.
You eat them fast, is what.
Well, you normally don't freeze hot dogs, Bob. I mean,
Right.
you just have to refrigerate them. But they wanted them frozen.
I absolutely love that. Not something I expected to come up in this conversation today, but I am absolutely here for it. That being said, is there anything else like because you guys have now touched pharmaceutical, food, pretty much if it needs to stay cold and dry ice has been involved, you guys have touched it. What is aside from maybe hot dogs, what is like the thing that you're like, okay, this is kind of a pain to figure out what temperature it needs to stay at? What's, like, the hardest thing that you've had to figure out?
Well, these chocolates that Bob referred to have an interior filling.
Oh.
And they don't know, I came up with the -5 degrees as the cutoff, but what I really have to do if we go further is set up an environmental room where we can change the degrees by 1 degree and see exactly, is it -5, -4.5, -6? What temperature do things start to thaw? The other thing Bob alluded to was condensation, and I live in a very humid area. So if the chocolate goes in the box at 75, 80 degrees, and then we freeze it, the moisture, which could be upwards to 90 some percent down here, is going to come out probably around in the 70s, Bob. It's going to start to come out. That's physics, and I can't change that. All right. So that's what we told them. You may need to use a dry room to pack this if you want things not to have moisture. Because that's not from our product. That's from the air and moisture contents, but it's solvable. Anything's solvable if you understand the physics behind it. And we end up being, always going all off track, designing freezers for people and doing this. We start out at point A and we end up at point Z half the time, trying to figure out what is the problem. Why? Because if we do it, it should be easily replicated. If we give you the product, we give you the box, you should be able to replicate it. And if you can't, that means something's wrong. And I got to figure out what is wrong. Are you sure that you did this? Are you sure you did this? Oh, yeah, sure we did. Uh-huh. Okay, we'll go up there and check that. Maybe -20 in your planet is different than my thermometer, which says it's only -12 in this room. Right? But whatever.
All right, gentlemen, that brings us to my favorite part of today. And since you guys have been on here a few times, we know where you stand on cereal is soup. We know your best dad jokes. Today, this one is going to be top tier. And I'm going to have Dr. Bob go first because I think, Cliff, your answer is going to be top tier as a veterinarian. So, if animals could talk, which one would be the most annoying? Doc- yeah.
You're up, Bob.
I'm thinking.
He's got thinking face.
Caught me off guard. Honestly, I don't know. I'll Cliff treats animals all the time, so I'm going to defer to his expertise in this one.
All right,
If I go way off,
well, animals can talk. You may not understand them, but we can talk. I mean, I have animals that look at me and they go, "Ruff," and then they look under the couch. And that means my ball went under the couch, get off the butt, and go get it. Right? They look at me and they go, "Ruff," and they look at the door. All right. I'm like, oh, God, I can't believe this. But that problem's been solved, Bob, because now they all open sliders and let themselves in or out. But I think the most annoying animal would be flies.
Oh, that's a good one. Yeah.
Buzzing around your head.
Because I don't even know
and
what
talking to you at the same time. Yeah.
I would lose my mind. I would lose my mind. I
Yeah.
would never go anywhere without one of those like fly swatters. Just pop in it.
Yeah.
We have our shepherd says outside. Literally says outside when he wants to go outside.
I mean, I've seen those people that like teach their dogs to press the buttons that like mean something. So, dogs are most of the way there. We just need to not get flies on that technology.
The problem is they're too smart. The problem is, I have 35 working dogs, and the things they do are beyond belief. They're beyond belief. They realize when the dog looks at the couch and looks at me and goes, "Roof," he's training me. Get up and go get his stupid ball that went under the couch. And then 10 minutes later, what's he do? Puts it under the couch again. Well, I think they're like, "What's this? I'm going to get that guy to get this stupid ball 20 times in the next hour." Because, and it shouldn't take him so long. I've gone over this with him 5 times. Right? They're training us, not we're training them.
Yes.
I absolutely love that. So if people have funny dog trainings, or if they have what a fly would say if it could talk, or if they have questions about how to phase out of dry ice, where can they find you guys outside the show? Dr. Cliff, to kick us off.
The website is thermalcustompackaging.com. And each of our emails are our first initial and our last name. So I'm C as in Charlie Glade at thermalcustom.packaging.com. And Bob is R. Robert DiLoretto at thermalcustom.packaging.com. If you can't remember any of that, info at thermalcustom.packaging.com.
I love it. You guys heard it here first. Slide into those DMs. They're open. Thank you guys so much for joining us today.
Thank
Thank
you,
you,
Mary.
Mary.
You can catch other episodes of Running on Ice right here on YouTube or anywhere you get your shows like Apple Podcast and Spotify. Need more Running on Ice news? No sweat. Subscribe to the newsletter on freightwaves.com/runningonIce. See you on the internet.